I'm resident of Collinwood, Jewel States. That's my buddy Gordon Dymowski, my buddy Patrick McCray, my buddy Alan Gallant. We're here to review the movie The Carey Treatment starring James Coburn. Really, really interesting film, guys. I picked this film because I really enjoyed it when I first watched it on Turner Classic Movies. It's very fast-paced, but it also tells a very interesting story about, yes, abortion, but also about performing the act when somebody, as the one doctor puts it, he felt bad because he's seen backdoor abortions and he doesn't want anybody to get ripped off.
Yeah, James Hong character.
Yeah, James Hong's character, which he was really, I think that if I had one complaint about this movie, his character was sort of interesting too, and you don't get a lot of him.
Right.
But James Coburn. So when did you guys first see this movie, Alan?
I first saw this movie yesterday. It's the first time I'd actually seen it, and I am somewhat of a Coburn fan, but I'd never seen this particular movie, and I was heartened to see him make the transition seamlessly from the 60s to the 70s in terms of his persona. I mean, he really is strong in his persona throughout that whole era. And I loved the script. I mean, I thought that the screenplay, the dialogue of the screenplay, I thought for its time was very scintillating and fast-paced, as you mentioned before. It's a fast-paced film.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of great sarcasm and wit in the screenplay as well, which some of it wouldn't be considered massively appropriate for today's audiences, although that's too bad because I thought it was just fine. So, but then again, I'm an old man, so.
Don't worry. At least you didn't recommend this to a bunch of women like I did. Anyway.
Wait, no, Joel. Now there's a story there. Now I got to hear about this.
I was at my foot doctor, and she was like doing my feet because I'm diabetic, as I've said before. And yeah. I was in the waiting area, and there was all women in there. And I said about this, I said, I'm going to review The Carey Treatment. Have you ever seen it? And I was explaining what it was about. And they're like, oh, I'm like, it's a great film. You should watch it.
Yeah.
That's how I left that.
Joel, let me give you one piece of advice next time. Before you do that, remember, read the room.
Yes, please.
I never read.
Your first clue is that it's a Blake Edwards movie, and really, with the exception of Victor Victoria, which we've been trying to get you to watch, his films are not really rallying cries from the third wave. I'll just say that his films are often lightning rods for criticism from female forward circles.
It's true. It's very true. Mm-hmm. Especially when many of them came out during the initiation of the second wave of feminism.
That's right.
And the criticism was even more harsh, I think, in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, my Blake Edwards mistake was long ago, where I recommended The Man Who Loved Women. Oh God, was I raked over the coals for that one? Oh Lord, it's a very funny movie.
It is.
It's got a scene where Burt Reynolds has a dog glued to his hand. That's extremely, and he's trying to escape Barry Corbin.
Yeah.
And from Northern Exposure, and it goes on from there.
Yeah, it is actually. I like the movie. I hadn't seen it in years, but I enjoyed it when I saw it. I remember that, and I think I saw it back in the 80s, or 70s.
Yeah, it's a very affectionate misogyny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and it's interesting. Yeah, Blake Edwards is now, of course, I'm not here to tell anyone, what they should and shouldn't be offended by. That's not my job. And I'm just sort of, just kind of feeling my way through, so to speak, the issue. Blake Edwards is he's a chauvinist, but he's not a misogynist.
No.
And that's a big difference. He does see women as sex objects, but he does not hate them.
No.
And that's it's sort of like Quentin Collins in that sense. And I make that distinction with Quentin.
Yes.
And it's a weird, maybe I'm splitting hairs, but it's an interesting distinction to make.
Yeah. Well, Quentin Collins is more of a sort of universal kind of, if you tick him off kind of thing. He becomes a misanthrope if he doesn't get what he wants to everybody,
But I mean, his rough treatment, as you say, he would apply to anyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Joel, I saw this movie the first time this morning.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I saw it yesterday because I hadn't heard of this movie. And I'm a big Coburn fan, so I like the fact that he's one of the few kind of action tough guy drama heroes who has a bit of a sense of humor about himself. That he knows how much to put it out. I thought the scenes were good, but I thought it was a little too brisk. But in doing some research, I found out that this movie was originally supposed to be 2 hours long, but thanks to James Aubrey at MGM, this is what we got. And I think, and I think, because I felt like, not only was it too brisk, but there were scenes where it felt like, okay, it felt like there should have been some more kind of connective tissue within the plot that wasn't there. I mean, it's not a movie that I would say is a 10 out of 10, but I do think that I think it suffers because there's information that I think would have helped given it a little bit more strength and a little bit more oomph.
Yeah.
And maybe that's because of Aubrey's insistence on the editing too. I mean, some of that
Right.
because of that. Yeah.
I would say that the editing sort of works in this movie's favor. I'm going to go the other way, and I'll tell you why. Because this is a movie that you have to pay attention to really carefully too. Because at the when Carey shows up there, and after his first day on the job, there's somebody who gets arrested for for possession of marijuana or something.
Yeah,
and
it's one of the kids that works at the hospital, I think.
Yeah, he stops a cop from shooting the kid, and he says, "You're going to cap a kid for what?" He said, "That would have been stupid." And the cop ends up searching Carey. Well, that's sort of part of the plot too, because somebody has been stealing medicine, and you find out later that the guy who massages Carey, he's been the one stealing like medicine to make his shit. And that nurse has been helping him, that redheaded nurse, who he ends up stabbing, and she like breaks the bottle and stabs the guy in the neck, which you don't get. That's sort of my one complaint, because this is the 70s, that you don't get to see the stabbing either way. But I get why they do, because it works for the effect of when he comes out the room and he's like staggering, he's all about ready to fall over. Great acting job, by the way. I know I'll probably like this movie more than you guys do, because the cuts work here probably way more than what they did at night, because
So you like the guy with the knife more in this movie than you did in Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, didn't you?
Yeah, okay. Gordon, thank you for introducing that, because if you hadn't mentioned it, I was. Joel, the entire reason you wanted us to see this movie, it's your bizarre vendetta against Russ Meyer and Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, which I do not understand. And you just wanted to see Michael Blodgett, a.k.a. Lance Rock, get beaten up by James Coburn of the Magnificent Seven.
Well, the guy is the male version of, Vixen, so why not?
Well, no, I mean, it's a prominent cast member Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Yeah, but I think to be fair, I think watching James Coburn smack the hell out of anybody is good entertainment. You know what I mean?
It is.
I want to see James Coburn smack the hell out of Victor Buono just for the hell of it.
Buono can take it. He married him for it. But but I wouldn't. Now, if he did that to Stephen Hawking, I would not be as on board with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always nice to see Dan O'Healy in a movie from Halloween 3 Season of the Witch.
He's not going to address it.
No, I will address it here. That
Okay.
the guy you're talking about, the guy who did the massages, I actually forgot he was in Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, like you're saying. I more know him from this movie than the movie you just mentioned. Although I watched that movie, he's more memorable to me in this movie because
Well, he has more to do.
Yeah, he
yeah,
does.
he has a lot more to do. And even though he's with this movie, he's not in his character isn't in the majority of the film. He's more near the end of the film. Like everything builds up to the climax after that massage parlor because
Yes.
Coburn's character
So to
is
speak.
questioning him. And I like how the massage parlor guy, he tells him, he goes, "You're a cop, aren't you?" Which he guesses wrong. He's not a cop, but he says, "I can smell him out. Well, your sniffer's a bit off here." But I do like how they do the car scene hitting the phone booth. Really, really
Yeah,
cool
I
stuff.
wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, that was pretty good jump scare there. Yeah, it's
Now,
like,
Yeah.
Joel, when you say things were nearing a climax in the massage parlor scene, at that point, were you expecting a happy ending to the story?
yeah,
Yeah,
handle it.
I was trying to avoid saying that out loud, Patrick. So I'm glad you did.
I took the lead on that.
And well done
But
it was.
really-
I mean, you got
really
to hand it to him.
That's
I
right.
think where a lot of one of the great scenes though too, after Carey's character the character of Carey gets hit by the car, he's getting taken to the hospital and they're telling him, "Hey, you got no concussion or anything, but we got to check you inside." He goes, "No, I need to see the girl." He wanted to see the girl, the nurse, because he saw her come out of that massage parlor. He recognized her even from behind because he had seen her. He's seen her so many times from working with her, and she was at his housewarming party. Sorry, I meant to ask.
And
you
Carey
this
would
question.
definitely recognize any woman from behind. That was the kind of guy he
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
was.
He really should have been a Starfleet captain
That's right.
of that era.
James Coburn, yes, especially. But what's some scenes you guys liked and maybe didn't like about this movie? Sorry.
It's a weird film. I mean, I haven't other than rant about Michael Blodgett, who's a fine actor. I haven't really waited. It's a very strange film. The for me the most interesting thing about this movie is this glimpse of the pre-Roe v. Wade abortion culture.
Yes.
And the way the film kind of tries to have it both ways, that it is, it is sort of hinting at the fact that if abortion were legal, the story wouldn't be happening. And then at the same time, though, it's so antiquated because of that. But then at the same time, I kept finding myself thinking, oh God, is this where we're headed again?
Yeah. Because what's happening now? Sure.
Yeah, is this where we're headed again? So I thought that I was disturbed by how high the pants were on the chef. That was odd. I was talking about curvaceous from behind in the wrong way. He's like a Kardashian.
Yes.
So that was weird. And literally everything he says is code. There is nothing that character says that is not some form of code. Because I kept waiting to turn it. I was watching it with a friend. I kept waiting to turn it into a double entendre, and then the character just did on his own, and I can't tell if that were intentional or not.
Right.
The film really lost me with the at this point in his career, the unfortunately inevitable appearance of Jennifer Edwards, who looking at her parents, in terms of inheriting talent, as an actress, she inherited all of her father's directing skill. My God, what a shrill performance.
Yeah.
But then she's put in this unenviable position of being in one of the most bizarre and disturbing scenes that I think maybe misfires. If we're supposed to see Coburn as heroic, this bizarre trial by wood paneled station wagon
Yeah.
is really the only word I can come up with is weird. I thought,
It's
what am I watching? This was like
it's
coming out of the movie Dreamscape. I expect
it's
like Dennis Quaid to show up.
yeah, it's mortifying actually. By today's standards, it's a mortifying scene.
I couldn't believe it because it just drips with Me Too anyway.
Yeah.
With all of these really horribly inappropriate questions, for him to be the sympathetic doctor and behaving in this manner, I have a really tough time continuing to take him seriously as a hero. And even I mean, yeah, well, he gets results, but I mean, that's why we have lawful good
Yes.
as an alignment. Not that he has to be that, but doctors take an oath, and it would have been nice if there's been some reflector character, some other decent doctor that he was working with occasionally, who now and then would say, you really can't do this,
Right.
and he has to push back and justify it. Joel, there's a really interesting movie that I would love to watch in concert to this as a follow-up. It's called The Hospital with George C. Scott, with Diana Rigg. And it's a Paddy Chayefsky movie he made right around this time, right before Network. And it'd be a really interesting double feature with this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a bad movie. It's just a really weird movie, and it is a slice of time that it got made, and so on and so forth. It is a slice of time that I got a lot of feels about. Where you've had certain conflicting moral aesthetics in movies that it created a really bizarre cocktail. Is the only way I can put it. That you would not have gotten a few years later or a few years earlier, and it just shows what an interesting and again, I hate to use the term because it's just so vague, but strange era this was.
Yeah.
Morally trying to figure out what a hero is, what taking action means. It was a fascinating slice of culture because of that.
Well, he
Yeah, because around this time, it's right in the middle of the Nixon years. You're dealing with a lot of Vietnam, a lot of Kent State, a lot of what was going on here. And the real irony of this movie is that it was based on a very early novel written under a pseudonym by Michael Crichton, and he had actually written this under a pseudonym because he was in med school and he didn't want his patients to worry about him writing, him using them
fake an
as
overdose or this. The only thought I had at the end of that scene was, this is really going to hurt your Uber rating.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of feel like there's some connective tissue missing, because I'm sure there could have been a scene where either he's talking to a doctor, or there is that reflective thing, as you said, Patrick, or he's like, these kids are not going to these kids are not going to, she's not going to listen to me anyway, so I might as well do something like that, because that scene comes out of nowhere. There's no real justification for it. There's not even a one-line rationalization.
When you were talking about the Aubrey cuts, I thought, I think there was probably something more in and around this.
Yes.
That we missed. I don't know what.
Yeah. But I think that there's an incomplete feeling to the relationship between Obern's character and Jennifer O'Neill as well. I mean, they have this one scene where they're in conflict at the party, and the rest of the time they're kind of rolling around in bed or alluding to rolling around in bed.
Yeah.
And then at the end, suddenly he says, "Yes, let's go meet your parents," or "I'll meet my parents," or whatever. And they end up together. There seems to be something sort of not quite there.
It's ironic for a movie that's about stopping people from becoming parents. Anyway.
There's a lot of things I'm going to get to with this. The relationship with him and Jennifer O'Neill's character, it starts when he goes to breakfast with the one doctor, and she goes, "If you have any complaints, put on the box. If you have any compliments, make to them personally." So she's right away, you can tell she's flirting with him, and then you find out later on that her husband has left her for Aspen. As she put it, he says everything's synthetic. So you find out she has a son to her husband who left her, and she's lonely, she's alone. And here's Dr. Peter Carey, who she's right away interested in. He invites her to dinner with Long's character. They make it a foursome, and she's playing pool. You can tell right away they have sort of a natural attraction to each other. And that stuff does tend to happen with real people, that you develop a natural attraction. When I first met my wife, before she was my wife, she was my girlfriend. It was a natural attraction. So with this, you have O'Neill's character. She tells him, she's sort of aggravated a bit that he's sort of investigating it, but she also understands, like, okay, I get you're trying to clear your friend. The one scene, the party scene you're talking about, where she gets mad at him. She gets mad at him because that red-haired girl he talks to, who's at the party, and he picks up that girl's being very odd, and you can sort of tell, yeah, she is. For everybody else who's having this good time, she seems to not want to really be there, but yet she's there.
Yeah, and that aspect, but we as an audience see that she doesn't, and he doesn't endeavor to explain it to her either, which is
Well, he
doesn't. He just goes, "Oh, come on," It's like,
too. You could sort of chalk that up to maybe he feels she's being jealous to a degree.
It's also a sign of the times. That kind of dialogue is a sign of the times in which it was written.
What sort of man reads Playboy?
Yes, kind of like that.
And she just puts off, look, she, in a sense, what she's trying to say, like, look, she's no good. Trust me. What she's trying to tell him is that the woman he was talking to, she's bad news. She's no good. And it was what O'Neill's character is trying to tell her, which you get right away.
Right.
And basically, it's not that she's just telling Carey that, she's telling the audience that, which I appreciate. It's like, okay, you get this weird feeling from this woman. What's the big deal? And I respect Jennifer O'Neill's character enough to listen to her when she says, yeah, see her? Yeah, no, there's a problem there. And I'm like, okay, what's the problem? But slowly as you're going through the movie, well, not slowly, but when you're going through the movie, you sort of start to see, like, when she's at her job, that redheaded woman, she acts, before you find out anything that she's dirty, she acts shady as shit. Like when Carey walks into the room, and that's well before you find out that she's doing illegal shit. It's like, what's with this girl? Like,
she's a drug addict, basically. That's
right, and
what spurs all of her behavior. She's right. A drug addict.
And one of my favorite scenes is when he goes to the all-girls college, and that girl gets in the car with him, and he takes her birth control. He goes, "Oh, this is your birth control," and he's driving like a maniac,
that's the scene we were just talking about.
Yeah, telling her about what happened to that girl who died, because he's pissed off. It's like, you basically helped kill this girl if you didn't know about it. And she finally tells him the name of the guy who was the masseuse. And she goes, "You're a real son of a bitch." And he just looks at her like, "Yeah, I may be a son of a bitch, but you're no saint either." I love the look Coburn gives her.
Well, again, I don't understand why she's still in the car.
Sorry.
Honestly, the moment that vehicle stops, I would be so far out of that thing. I'd be in the middle of Indiana.
Yeah, well, obviously it was the best. The weird thing about that scene for me too was the fact that the screenplay was written by Harriet Frank and Irvin Ravitch under the name James Bonner, so it was written under a man's name. But it was actually a woman was contributing to this, and even in those times, I have to think that would have given her pause, that scene, somewhat, and would have had to have been argued into a little bit, maybe.
That, or she was just therapeutically writing her own nightmare.
Maybe. Yeah.
But I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about that scene, especially because when he jumps the bridge, he doesn't go yeehaw.
It's not Bo and Luke Duke.
Oh,
going on. No, it's true. I mean, looking back on it from the lens of now to then, or even then, I think it's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
But
this isn't presentism.
But it's much more creepy now. Knowing what we know and the negotiations that we've made between, the sexes and genders and everything else, and what is appropriate and what's not, and Me Too and all of that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very chilling in its way. His behavior in that scene is sort of rapey, is what it is.
Yeah, when I was watching it, because I had a lot of concerns during the Me Too movement of sex being weaponized.
Of course.
And as I was watching this scene, the one thing I kept thinking is, well, I guess we did need the Me Too movement. I really, that's, yeah. Wow. I had talk about rape culture.
Yeah.
Good God.
Absolutely.
Well, too, the character in question, though, too, she's the one who's been having the sex with all the men, not the girl who got killed.
No, whoa.
And
but even assuming that, you don't make the further assumption that since she's a slut, I can abuse the shit out of her.
Yeah, there were shades of she had it coming there, Jewel, right. And please you don't want to go there.
Well, in a sense, not when he offers her a ride. And when she gets in the car, he already knows that the birth control is hers. He knows that because of being a doctor from a fictional sense. So when he's taking on her ride, well, he knows, I got to get this girl to tell me the real truth. And how do I do it? I'm going to go fast like a crazy man. I love the action sequence because I love the car scenes. You get a car scene in any movie, I'm there. Presto. So I love the scene for what it is.
Terrorizing a 15-year-old girl.
If you want to go to Bullet, because Bullet, at least it's more justifiable in Bullet.
Joel, I wish I could give you a shovel right now, because that way it could help you dig yourself into a deep hole.
Yeah.
Did Julie watch this movie with you?
Yeah.
What did she make of that scene?
Well, she's like, well, so she said right away, she goes, that girl knows something. And she goes, more than what she's saying. My wife is the one who, when I rewatched Dark Shadows with Julie, when we got married, she's the one who looked, when Angelique walked into the room, she goes, when her and Barnabas were interacting with each other, she goes, well, those two fucked, meaning the characters.
Yeah.
So Julie picks up on things with women and men.
I think our concern is more the method of the extraction of the information.
Well, she didn't mind it. She got why he was doing that because, as she put it, she goes, you can tell she's not telling, the truth. The young girl. Julie even said that when she watched this movie with me. I said, hey, I want to show you the Carey treatment. And she goes, okay, we didn't watch it today. We watched it when I first bought it. That's when I had her watch it with me. And she goes, you could tell that girl's not telling the truth, that she's not, she goes, so he's, again, you got to put it in context. Okay, he's, as she put it, he's not a cop. He has no real right to ask her questions. So how's he going to get the information out of her? And what to do? Oh, he offers her a ride, gets her in his car, and starts driving like a minute. She goes, yeah, 5 minutes in this car with this guy, I'd be telling them everything, including my birthday.
Sure. But I guess the thing is that we're looking at it from a very either jaundiced or clarified point in culture. And I know that we have to be culturally relativistic about this
Right.
and say it's a different time. And at the same time, I've seen other films from that era. And there are those who would say that occasionally I slip into moments where I make Charles Bukowski look like Phil Donahue. And still, that really was a very tough scene to watch. I thought about waterboarding, because Carey's a guy who would have been down with waterboarding no matter what. And I mean, I don't know, Gordon, what do you think?
Well, kind of to piggyback on that, a similar scene in a film of that time would probably be person's not talking. You take him, put him in the car. Maybe there's like a lot of speeding up and swerving, but you then don't go driving down into a beach, getting the water on it, splashing it, threatening a person's life, and then stopping and going, okay, yeah, they talk. And usually in those scenes, the person who needs to talk is over 18. Doing that to say a woman at the time, over 18, still problematic. And doing it in that way, still problematic. But this here, it really feels very, it feels very malevolent. It's
he's 45 and she's 15.
I mean, it starts when she says, we're really not supposed to have men in there, especially ones with gray hair.
Right, and he kind of blows past that. Yeah.
Yeah, and if he had played it off by saying, well, your father has gray hair, as far as they're concerned, right now I'm your father. That would have been creepy, but it would have at least been aping an excuse.
Right.
Rather than, how I'm going in here right now? Patriarchy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's Jules. I don't think there's any question about his intention of satisfying his suspicion. That's it's the methodology by which he does, and the reflection of, even in its own time, how that would have been inappropriate.
Yeah.
I guess I have no issue with it, but I guess I understand what you got.
You've never taught.
There is a terror.
Yeah.
There is a terror.
Yes.
Well, here's the thing though, too. Like, there's times when, when you look at this movie, what are the police really doing? They're just looking to pin everything on Long's character. Like they're looking to lock him up and throw away the key. He's already in jail. So here's his friend who isn't a cop. Hey, I need to do something about this, or my friend's going to go down to jail for something I know he didn't do. And so he decides to do something about it. We often hear about stories where a complete stranger decides to step in and do something that the police and nobody else is willing to do. And that's basically what Carey's doing, in a sense.
It's interesting, Jewel. There is the FBI did a study about the lone man with a gun phenomenon. And their findings were that not only was it rare, if ever, but that the lone man with a gun which is sort of what you're talking about, consistently caused more chaos, more death, more shooting, more difficulty than honestly either just running or being momentarily compliant, as cowardly as that sounds. It's a really interesting thing. Look up Jordan Klepper, who's amazing. He's one of the greatest journalists out there right now. Jordan Klepper, you can find this on YouTube, did a really good sort of walkthrough with the FBI on their sort of citizens gun training stuff, and did a whole thing on Lone Man with a Gun with them. Wow. Did either of you other guys see that? Klepper's thing on it?
But I know references to that study. I have not actually seen the journalistic investigative articles. So.
The big climax of it was revealing Lone Man with a Gun was an incredibly dangerous philosophy.
Right.
I'm not saying people turn in their guns and eat their ass through things.
You do in the situation that they were really kind of analyzing.
Oh, sure. You're shooting. The police come in.
And you're going to get shot too.
Yeah, it's not like you have a stat bar above your head
Yeah.
that tells you that tells them that you're one of the good guys. They just see a guy with a gun, another guy with a gun,
Well,
and that's it.
That's it.
I think too, it depends on the incident too. Look at the Austin Bell Tower sniper in Texas. If you go look at that, the reason he got pinned down in the first place is not because of the police. It's because the Texan citizens went to their car and got their gun and started returning fire on that motherfucker and pinned his ass down.
He wasn't in a crowd of people either.
And
was
then
tower.
the other side of the bell tower, the targets were too far away from him, and then finally the police did show up.
So he was confronted basically by, it sounds like, a small militia.
Yeah.
He was confronted by Texas citizens with guns.
Yeah.
Station wagons full of guns.
That's so that's not Lone Man with the gun.
Well, right, but it's
Yeah,
and
that's big difference.
It's also a clear target. It's not a target that's surrounded by people or whatever. So that context is important in those cases. But I'll agree with you on that one. But that's a contextual agreement that I'll make with that.
Well, right, because he's firing on innocent civilians. Well,
but he's also what I'm saying is he's clear. He's a clear target.
He's isolated.
He's not surrounded by a crowd.
No, I understand that, but at the same time, the guy in the bell tower, he's shooting innocent people. The cops are nowhere in sight. Here's these people who are gun owners. They have guns in their vehicle. Hey, we need to do something before he continues his slaughter. And so they return fire, pin him down in the process. And then the other side of the tower, the targets were too far away. He couldn't hit them.
Now, these are the same people who shot Ben at the end of Night of the Living Dead, right? I mean,
Yeah, there's your man with a gun right there, Joel.
They certainly show the will to do it. So,
the triumph of the will to do it in this case.
It's right. The will.
Oh,
let me tell you what I liked about this movie, Joel. I liked the texture of it. I liked the fact that it's so dripping in 70s that you can almost sink your teeth into it. Roy Budd wrote the music, and it sounds beginning. It sounds like an episode of LA TV from that era. Around that era, like an episode of Canon or something like that,
The score is terrific.
And it's shot in Metrocolor, which half of those shows were shot in at that time. So there's that. There's the film stock has that thick, sort of just slightly off color aspect to it. Maybe the color's a little too lurid or not lurid enough, depending on how it's shot. And the dialogue is really sly and sharp right from the beginning of it. So you're getting right into that whole thing there. So that writing is very much of that period. And you have like all of these guys that were guest stars on a million television shows. And Robert Mandan is in it. You just see him in like this one kind of scene or two scenes, and that's it. But Jennifer O'Neill, who was a budding film star at the time, but also did television. She was only 24. I don't know how old Coburn was, but probably at least 20 years older than she at that time, which was pretty standard operating, and Coburn still kind of is sometimes.
Coburn looked that way when he was about 13.
Yeah, he did. I mean, the hair no longer passed for blonde after about 25. It just didn't. But I kept thinking of the Flint movies when I was watching the first half hour of this movie, because his angularity and his wit and all of that sort of thing.
I wanted Lee J. Cobb to show up as his former chief of residence, saying, "You don't want a doctor like Carey. You can't control a doctor like Carey."
And that phone going off, which was ripped off by Michael Myers.
There's a lot of people in this movie
that is the ringtone that I have set on my phone.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people in this movie who do try to sort of talk Carey out of doing this. Pat Hingle's character, who's the inspector in this movie, The Dan O'Healy's character basically is telling, hey, I know he's your friend, but stay out of this. And one of my favorite scenes in this movie is where he thinks Dan O'Healy's character is blackmailing him. He catches the photographer who takes a picture of him and O'Neill's character sleeping together. He catches the guy. He takes the camera. He removes the film, and he has the film blown up. And he goes, he rips it off. He rips the package. He goes, look, 2 consenting adults making love. And
yes,
he puts it in his office.
Size thing.
Yeah.
And that's 70s melodrama. That is totally 70s melodrama. Doing something like that. I mean, nobody in their right mind is going to do that shit because he's going to say,
I've done it.
Blackmailing you, but now I'm going to, and just take a poster.
I would have done it, but I would have photoshopped my head on both people.
That's right. Just
really confused
my
me.
split twin.
Oh God. What you got? Well, what's you guys' favorite scene? I know Alan talked about a scene he liked.
It's just the whole milieu for me, the whole thing. It just that one scene is problematic. I agree with Patrick on that, but and some of the cuts are a little jumpy, but overall, I just like the mood of it. It's super nostalgic for me. So,
yeah. I probably the scene with going into the photography store. That's
it's pretty fun.
And the way that he picks up compatriots, I think is pretty slick. Informants and compatriots and people like that. That he's a much more authentic character in this world that's all about secrecy.
Yes.
That's all, and he is about getting people to be honest with him. And the very fact that he's, working through, the abortion scene as it was at the time, I think is really fascinating. I love the music. The film is full of good, Jewel, as you said, it's got a ton of great character actors in it, and it's full of wonderful two-handers with all of them. I mean, most of the scenes in the movie are just, really going to be 2 or 3 actors, and they really get a chance to work a scene and to do some acting. That's why the suspicion of cuts is so pointed, because there are places where you can just feel dramatic. And Blake Edwards certainly knows what he's doing. You can just feel dramatically we're building, and then whoop, suddenly
there's a cut.
Suddenly we're someplace else. Yeah.
And now we take you to the party, out of a scene in the forensics lab or something, Yeah, that happens a couple times for sure.
This is a screenplay that I wish had gotten a treatment by Blatty. Because Blatty was a major script doctor at the time and had been a script doctor for Edwards, and they had just gotten done collaborating a lot.
Yes.
And I think Blatty was either busy writing The Exorcist or enjoying the fame of The Exorcist, and it's like, Blake who?
Right.
Yeah.
I think the book was out by the time this movie came out, so yeah.
Burt Denning is kind of based on Blake Edwards, which is a little weird considering what Burt Denning probably does in The Exorcist.
Yes.
And why he gets killed.
Yeah, I'm gonna say the photography scene, where he goes in the studio, simply because it's when you expect it to be he gets the photo and goes to O'Hurley's office and say, okay, I know you're sending photographers after me, but doing it that big and just saying, hey, look, yeah, I'm having it on with your dietitian. It's very natural. Just like, it's very natural for Joel to wear to wear a bunny costume when he's not online because he's a furry.
Bunny Caligula, right? Bunny Caligula.
He had, for the longest time, Joel called me Incatatus. That was my nickname for his Turk Thrust. I was Incatatus. But it was my favorite character in any of that. I wanted a series of children's books about Incatatus, the horse who could be senator. The thing that I thought was really funny is, I said this to my friend when we were watching the movie, And I said, you know how he really got O'Herlihy in that scene? You know how he really got him? That after he leaves and leaves that picture up there, O'Herlihy's going, shit, there goes my afternoon. I'm going to have to find a frame. I'm going to have to get it framed. Then I've got to find a level. And then I got to find a place in this office to hang it. And I was like, there goes my afternoon.
Right.
I'm done. You got me, Carey. You got me this time.
Fortunately, he has a portable bar in his office, so.
Well, they all did. You know, if you go back and watch Stingray, which is the greatest television series ever made, the Jerry Anderson Stingray.
Yes.
I think they have a wet bar on the bridge of the
American
Stingray.
bar. Yeah.
I really do. I think they got a wet bar on the bridge of the Stingray. What a great show. Joel, have you ever seen Stingray?
No.
It's amazing.
The other Jerry Anderson shows are really pretty insufferable. They're beautiful to look at.
Yes.
But
they use essentially the same gimmicks that this does. So
Stingray has writing that's just luminous. It just the episodes are only like 20 minutes. They crack by. It's got lots of wild ideas, but the characters are really for especially for puppets are really pretty good.
Yeah.
And the stories are a lot of fun. For me, the great afternoon is to take a couple episodes of Stingray and put them back to back with a couple episodes of Space Soldiers. The first Buster Crab Flash Gordon serial.
There you go.
Put those things together, you got a stew going.
Live action and marionettes, both.
Yep, and it's free on Tubi, Joel, so you have no excuse.
It's really good.
If you like drunk puppets, that's your show.
And you got Lois Maxwell is one of the voices, Miss Moneypenny.
And it's got a cracking, it's got a really slapping intro theme.
Jules, have you seen Team America?
What is it? What'd you say?
Team America. It's also done with marionettes and puppets. It's sort of a satire of the Anderson stuff. It's hilarious and it's crude. You'll love it. It's absolutely hilarious.
Stand by for action.
Yes.
Which is how every Stingray episode begins. Is one of the characters says, stand by for action, which every TV show should open like that.
And the opening is great visually, too, of that series. It's
great theme song. Just great everything.
Yeah.
Couple things before we get out of here. If you guys are interested, tomorrow I'm doing House of Dark Shadows with a friend at 10:30.
So we're not.
Well,
I see how it is.
You could.
Okay,
I've invited you.
Does this friend exist, or is this like your imaginary Facebook friend?
Oh.
All right, so you're going to be
a real friend.
Get in my
you guys are going to show up, and that friend's going to tell you exactly where to stick it. Finally, that's what it is. You're setting us up. We're going to have the Curtis girls are going to be there, and they're going to beat us up if we don't like everything about that movie.
No, but
they certainly picked me up because it's not one of my favorite movies.
Patrick, is Jim Pearson. I'm very disturbed about your thoughts on House of Dark Shadows.
I mean, I'd love to have you if you got. I would love being
had.
Yeah, I'd love to have you guys tomorrow night if you're interested.
10:30.
Yes.
10:30. Yeah, House of Dark. It'll be my friend Daniel Culver Killenberg, who just watched the movie a couple days ago.
Cool.
So he's just at the scene in the series where Magda was revealed as Jenny's sister. That's where he's at in the series.
Oh.
And I sent him the movie. I said, you got to watch the movie. He said, yeah, sure, I'll watch it. And he watched it. So I said, so we'll do it Sunday. So I figured to invite you guys too, because I love having you guys. Any final thoughts about the Carey treatment before we go?
I'm glad we watched it. George, seriously, I'm really glad we watched it. It can be a challenging film, but it is such a wonderful slice of this period in so many ways, especially ideologically. And I think it's an important film because of that. Reflecting the similarities and the alienness of that time.
Yeah, because it's a completely different time, and also the way that film stock manifests itself, and lighting, and fashion, and all of those things are just so different now than they were then.
It's funny to go back and look at the poster, and realize that that dramatic image of Coburn is as
Yes.
he's beating up a masseur.
Yes.
Yeah,
Um,
it's also
Action
sign-
gesture.
Yeah, it's also a good measure of how films were regarded back then, because it's basically, I had never heard of this film, and the fact is, it's not one of Blake Edwards' better known movies. It was released by Warner Archive, which is their DVD on demand.
It was originally an MGM film. That's why I think.
Yeah, but it's one of those that gets kind of gets lost in the shuffle. But I think back in those early '70s, most studios were cranking that stuff out because they needed money.
Well,
and there were
not only
also
that, but
drive-ins all over the country too. They were double
yeah,
everywhere.
I mean, this was, you had very few entertainment outlets, and you didn't have a million networks and things like that. And you had these big studios, and you had lots more movie theaters. Or, maybe I think overall, maybe even with multiplexes now, you still had more screens
Yeah, I think so.
back then.
I think
And
so.
they were from like monoplexes, duoplexes the most, that you had to fill this stuff with stuff. And so, the days you were talking, Gordon, a few weeks ago about the B movie,
Hmm.
and that you had A movies, and then you largely had kind of A minus movies, of which this would have been one. It's a perfectly decent, serviceable film, the likes of which were still being made 10, 15 years ago. I think of a movie well, frack, I mean, like comedies. Like, what the hell happened to comedies?
Right.
We used to have comedies all the time. And like a perfectly decent one, which was one of the last gasps of this type of film, was Ghost Town, Ricky Gervais's Ghost Town. And just a pleasant little comedy. And that's
Right.
all it's meant to be. And that, wow. And you did have films like this that were just cranked out all the time. Like, I can think of weird ones like Kiss Me Goodbye. Who knows Kiss Me Goodbye? There's no reason you should. James Caan, Sally Field, he plays the ghost of a choreographer.
Oh my God, I'd forgotten all about that movie. Holy.
Yeah, I specialize in those films.
It's good.
And I'm not proud of it.
It was not a bad film. I mean,
It wasn't.
No.
Yeah, just because of the budget and everything else. I mean, this was an era. Well, this was 10 years prior to an era where a big budget, major summer blockbuster was Ira Levin's Death Trap.
Yes. And Death Trap was one of my favorites because I'd been involved in a stage production of that before the movie came out. So that was
Key. Where are you, little brass key?
Yes.
But even that, which now is so small, you couldn't get that thing made.
No. It'd be different.
Maybe you can get it made for streaming.
They probably only got it made at the time because they had, stars in it. They got some reasonably decent stars for that level of script,
Yeah, but Hollywood made a lot of movies like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and a lot of them were bad, a lot of them were good. Yes, Giorgio. Remember that?
I don't remember
The
that.
romantic comedy starring Luciano Pavarotti.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
To Gordon's point about Warner Archive, that's actually what it says on the DVD archive collection.
Yeah,
I think they have a streaming network now.
yeah, and I think it's kind of the. I mean, the great thing about the '70s and the '80s was that you had a lot of content put out there. You had a lot of. Let me rephrase that. There are a lot of movies put out.
It was the
now it's just content.
Video era too. The 80s and into the early 90s. That was the beginning of the direct-to-video era. You had a lot of films coming out, and
and that was good for 24-hour cable.
Yes,
because they could fill up 24 hours without it being monotonous.
Right.
With where even like the big movies that they were playing that month, For Your Eyes Only or something like that, you had to really go through that little HBO guide and get there at the right time, or else you'd be watching God knows what, a shock to the system.
Right.
That's another one, which is a Michael Caine movie that's great. It is one of the darkest movies in 1988, 89. Wow, is it good? It's just completely vanished.
For for next Saturday. Patrick, it's your turn to pick for next Saturday.
Well, I'm really torn because we had talked about several good movies. What had we thrown out there? Because I know I'd mentioned Victor Victoria, I mentioned The Hospital.
Yeah.
Fuck, we've never talked. Pardon me, but we've never talked about Network.
Yeah.
Right.
Jewel, have you ever seen Network?
Yeah, I've seen it many years ago. I saw it.
I saw a brilliant stage version of it last time.
What, the Bryan Cranston thing?
It was fantastic. It was.
Wow.
amazing.
I've seen little clips of it, and
The floor was made out of lucite. They had all these things going on. They had the area direction was incredible, and the switcheroo at the end was mind blowing. It was, you couldn't tell until afterwards, and then when somebody told you how they did it.
I didn't know there was a switcheroo.
There is,
but the chances of me ever seeing it, I don't think it's really spoiler alert.
On stage is he dies. Okay. He gets killed.
Yeah.
And there's a cover. He gets covered over, and then all of a sudden he's narrating to you from upstage, and the body is still there.
Oh,
it's
that's good.
It's really good. But I mean, that's just one thing that kind of jumps at you. The whole thing is brilliantly acted. Everybody in it was fabulous. All the supporting players were absolutely fabulous.
The trick is with that stage effect is that there briefly were two of them, and one of them had to die every night. Yeah. Just like The Prestige.
That's right. That's right. Prestige. That's another film. I love The Prestige.
Oh, God. Prestige. It's my favorite Christopher Nolan
film. And The Illusionist, both. I love them both. Those came out pretty close together. And
they did. Jewel, in answer to your question, Gordon, I know I'd mentioned something else. Oh, God, yeah, because we were going to do it, and then we bumped it for the Carey treatment. Remember?
Were we not going to do that Vincent Price movie at one point?
Yeah,
we're going to do that again. But this was something else, because I had said, hey, why don't we do this? And everybody was like, yeah, let's do that. And Joel said, I want to do Carey treatment. I was like, okay, let's do Carey treatment. So what was the movie I brought up?
I'm forgetting. I'm tempted to say Manchurian Candidate, but that wasn't it.
We talked about it. We talked about Manchurian Candidate in that episode.
So Jewel, let's say this. Because this was more of a kind of a thriller, sort of, a micro-political thriller. So, really interesting drama or comedy. We're going to watch The Loved One.
Okay.
That was the movie.
That was it.
The Loved One. Well, oh, boy, is that a good movie.
Yes.
To sort of help you guys out, too, we'll do that one Saturday, The Loved One. But since I know you guys have been wanting me to watch the Victor one. The Victoria.
Victor Victoria.
Victor Victoria is a great movie.
Well, let's do the Love One Saturday. Let's do Victor Victoria Sunday. How's that?
That's a wonderful double feature. I have no objection to watching both those movies and talking about them.
Where can I find both of those films? You guys, National Archive or what?
Gordon, you click on the draw about that.
Let's see. Let's look up.
Jewel, do you still have? Oh, I can't. Okay, never mind. I'm not gonna mention that right now. A winning smile and a beautiful tenor voice.
I have something.
Nobody sings when Irish eyes are smiling like this cat. I mean,
well, The Loved One is available via Movies Anywhere. It's not on like Tubi. Oh wait. Oh no, that's okay. Warning. There's a movie. The movie we're talking about is The Loved One. There's another one that came out in 2012 called The Loved Ones. So
you want the 1965 one, George?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
With James Coburn. It starts with James Coburn.
Cool.
Yeah, James Coburn's beating up a guy.
No.
So we've got. So according to this, it's on Hulu. It's mostly paid. I'm sure that. I'm planning to check it out at the local library. So,
okay.
Yeah, you might be able to get it on Hoopla.
Okay.
Or even it's on YouTube for rental.
Okay.
So
it is.
Jewel, as they say in heavy metal, relax. I got an angle.
Well, I can rent the movies on Amazon Prime probably, so it's no big deal.
Yeah, it's on Amazon Prime. Yeah, it's.
Okay,
It is.
I'll
And
rent
then-
them.
It
Let me
is.
look up Victor Victoria.
I'll rent the first one. That's no big deal.
Yeah, okay, yeah, not a problem. And then Victor Victoria.
Also, let's see. Also on Amazon Prime. Also on YouTube.
Joel, why don't we? Yeah, why don't we draw this to a close, and I'll enlighten you. as
Yeah,
to
let me.
something.
All right. Before I stop recording, links to Alan Gallant's
Okay,
YouTube channel,
I've
link
got
to
a link
Gordon
for Victor
Dymowski's
Victoria.
Amazon page, link to Patrick McCray's Dark Shadow Stable Compound. I'm going to stop recording, guys.